Welcome, everyone. This is Virginia Parsons, your Hangout mentor and the host of the Inspirational Businesswoman Show. And I'm thrilled to be here today and to welcome all of you to our show. You know, we're going to be talking to the master of questioning and curiosity in just a moment. I can't wait to ask her lots of questions. But in the meantime, before we get started, I want to hear from you. I appreciate that you're here today, that you are taking your precious time to hang out with us. So let me know where you're hanging out from and a little bit about your own passion, because you know it is my passion to help bring you, the entrepreneur, a gold mine of entrepreneurial tips, strategies, and advice to help you grow your business from inspirational businesswomen in the know. I also want to be creating a collaborative of inspired business women and men who can all get to know each other, support, and uplift one another. So let us know about what your passion is and where you're hanging out from. And I appreciate that you're here today. Now, today's show is sponsored by hangout-marketing.com, where you can receive a free Hangout marketing assessment that's going to evaluate your skill set and your knowledge base in using Hangouts on Air to brand, grow, and market your business. And all you have to do to take advantage of that assessment is pick up your phone. That's right, pick it up right now and text the word success, SUCCESS, to 307-269-2040. Now, that assessment's only going to take you a couple of minutes, and it's going to give you a wonderful report back to just let you know where you can start to use Hangouts on Air to grow your business. And you might even qualify for a free strategy session with me, where you and I will sit down and personally discuss your business and how you can use Hangouts to grow your business exponentially. So take advantage of that, won't you? Now, let's get into today's show. I want to introduce you to our special guest, Adina Laver. She is the founder of The Courage to Be Curious, and she's been using questioning in her career for a long time to get to the best answers. But sometimes to get to those best answers, you have to know how to create the best questions, and she's a master in that. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about, is the courage to be curious and take game-changing questions onto your page for growth in your business and your life. So some of the topics that we have picked out for you, I think, will be really helpful and beneficial in your business and in your life. Like how to become conscious of the questions you ask. You know, we're asking questions all the time, but are we consciously aware that we're asking those questions? And how might that be guiding the answers that we get? That's the first topic. Then let's talk about uncovering the questions that drive your actions, because it is getting the right answers that are going to move you forward in taking action. And Adina's got some great tips for you in that regard. Finally, how about discovering the right questions to ask so that they're in alignment with your goals. You know, if you ask the wrong questions, you may get off track on where you want to go with your goals. So no more talking from me. Now let's bring Adina on and say hi to our audience, Adina. I'm so thrilled to have you here with us.
Hi, Virginia. It's so great to be here. I'm thrilled to be on Hangouts with you.
Terrific. Well, I know people are going to have lots of questions, as do I, but let's sort of start at the basics because, you know, all of us that are in a business, you know, we all have our challenges in life and our struggles and those things that sometimes hold us back and oftentimes propel us forward. And I know they'd love to know a little bit about you and your background and how you got really so passionate about this topic of questioning. So go ahead and share that with everyone, won't you?
Sure. I will definitely say that the journey, and I'll talk a little bit about where it went, began with a question, of course. And there was a defining moment for me, and I was sitting actually in my coach training program, and I got to a page on the workbook, and there was a little section down at the bottom, and there was a question there that said, list 3 things that make you happy. And I had one of these like, oh no moments. For some reason for me, the happy question had always been really difficult. I could answer all sorts of other ones. And so I thought about, should I run to the bathroom? Should I duck my head down so they don't call on me? All kinds of things. But I had this question that sat with me that felt like it should be so easy to answer and felt really difficult. And what came after the question that was really difficult shortly was a whole exercise on listening. Well, good to know if you're going to get asked a question that you know how to listen to what happens. And I started to listen. And I'll talk a lot more about that as we get into the show. But ultimately what happened was in starting to think about the questions I was asked and the questions I was asking and learning to listen in a different way, because you can ask great questions, but if you don't know how to listen to the answers, you don't always get the best information, is that it started to lead me down a path in terms of my professional career. And one of the first stops in this reinvention of my professional career, I guess I should say, led me to a company that you had listed originally on the advertisement for this, which is Divorce Essentials, which was a company that was founded because people were asking serious questions in their life about the future direction and how do we become conscious about why we're asking those questions and what we can do about it. And from that work and helping people to really navigate a big transition with deep levels of consciousness at one of the most difficult times in life came the birth of Courage to be Curious, because it's all about the questions we ask when we're really staying conscious. And so gave birth to this company, which official launch date is June 16th. This is sort of the pre-game show, which I'm so excited to have happening right now, of really being conscious, making a commitment to consciousness about how we are choosing to run our businesses, live our lives, and be in relationship with other people.
Oh, what a wonderful answer. And congratulations on this whole new branch in your own life, which I'm sure came also from asking questions, didn't it?
Oh, it so did. And it's so interesting, like many people out there, how we discover ourselves clinging and hanging on to things and afraid to make moves. But really asking this questions, the right questions again and again, learning how to listen well to answers. If we really have the courage to do that, that we will be taken in the right directions.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you have just a whole myriad of letters behind your name. And although we don't spend a lot of time emphasizing that, you've got quite a background of training. Would you like to bring any of that to people's awareness?
Sure. I mean, it's interesting because I am a naturally curious person. And so one might call me a perpetual student all the time. And I certainly spent a lot of my energies as a student, accumulating degrees that came as a result of pursuing interests. But I do have a master's in education. And really, I always looked at my role as an educator, whether I was a teacher, administrator, or actually training administrators as, what is our level of consciousness here? What are we trying to do? And what are we trying to bring about? And how can we do that in new ways? So I have a background in education and a principal certification and things like that. I also have an MBA, and that's really came out of curiosity too, because as I was working in schools and nonprofits for a long time, I wondered, what would happen if we ran parts of this work with the mindset of the professional business world, not trying to run education or nonprofits as businesses, but what is there to contribute there? And so that really came from a deep curiosity too, and wanting to operate as optimally as I could. And then those final 3 letters, you see, the CPC is really my coach training, certified professional coach, which really I felt gave me the deepest training in asking questions and listening.
Well, I think you make a really good and important point that all the education in the world is so powerful for learning to formulate questions, learning to be intrigued and wonder about it. But you know what? That part of education doesn't do a great job, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, in really preparing you for running an entrepreneurial business. Would you agree?
I would agree. You get all kinds of practice sets and information and, readings and things like that give you information, but running a business, especially, you're starting your own, you might be a solopreneur, a small business, you have to learn the most difficult thing to learn, which is how to ask your own questions and learn to trust yourself in what you hear. And, the education can give you all these frameworks, but they don't really tell you what's right for you and what's going to work best for you.
I think so too. So that's where just having the experience of being an entrepreneur, and in my case, just being an entrepreneurial spirit, gives you so many opportunities for growth and challenge, and those all bring up more questions. And what's the next best step is sort of what I always think about. What's the next best step? I use that one a lot. I use, what is the desired outcome of what I'm doing right now? What's important right now? Those are some of the questions that I ask all the time. And so just sort of hold on to that, and let's move into how to become conscious of the questions that you ask. Those are the 3 that I'm very conscious of.
Which is great. And I know, like those questions, whenever I walk into a meeting, whether I'm facilitating it or someone else's, I always want to know, what's the purpose here? What's the goal? Why are we sitting here? And what's going to be brought forward that wasn't brought forward before? And so even in just thinking about this, you've asked yourself that question, what's the goal of this hangout today? And, I've asked myself that too. And just in starting there, what do I want people to be able to walk away with is this sense of how important it is to ask the questions before we begin things, and to keep asking again and again, because sometimes we think we've started with the right question. Sometimes nuances show up and there's an opportunity, but to keep that inquisitiveness going throughout what you do. So I want to just bring that here, that if people walk away with that sense of really being curious all the time, then they will have gotten the goal.
It kind of reminds me of my 5-year-old granddaughter right now, because she is in the ultimate questioning phase. And it just makes me chuckle, because one question leads to an answer, leads to another question, leads to another answer. I think she's the ultimate example of what we really can do with our lives to grow and continue to learn.
And it's funny, because when we're 5, before we've actually been to school, which can be a very life-changing experience, is we're all about the questions. And when we get to school, lots of times we become very focused on the answers and getting it right, that we lose sight of what can come from asking the questions. And that really goes to the part you asked me about, was the consciousness and becoming conscious of the questions. And we don't have exact data, but close enough to say, of our entire mind, and I've recently been reading books on mind and consciousness that are just blowing me away completely, but we operate at the level of conscious awareness is about 5 to 10% at the most of everything that's stored in our brain. And so 90 to 95% of everything we do is driven by our subconscious or unconscious mind. And that's a pretty remarkable thing when you think about it. How we get up in the morning, how we answer those emails, what order we put email in front of other important priorities in our business, all the things that we do, most of it is perpetuated by habit and not by conscious awareness. And firstly, just knowing that is huge. So what it really means is that consciousness is taking a step back to say, I could ask a question about virtually anything I'm doing in my business or in my life if I want to really learn more about how to optimize it. Like, let me ask about anything and everything. Why do I look at my phone as the first thing when I wake up in the morning? How do I determine which emails are most important? Why do I answer emails all day long instead of, at designated times during the day? How do I answer consults when they come up? So that idea of bringing things that are habitual into a state of consciousness is a pretty huge practice. And it's not one that really comes naturally to us once we graduate out of the fives, and into, the older states, because we get very used to the habit. So into this realm of consciousness is the real encouragement to say, wow, if 90 to 95% of what I do is not conscious, or with my active consciousness, there's always something for me to be exploring, and always a way to be improving or attaining more of my goals by now activating a level of consciousness about something not previously in my consciousness.
Wow, that's powerful. That's really powerful. I'm well aware of that. And there's, of course, they'll never resolve how much of our conscious or our subconscious drives our behavior and our actions. But I would say you're probably at least right, and at least 90% is subconsciously driven. I've heard as much as 98%, which means, we're not doing a lot of conscious thinking. But what you're suggesting then is become conscious of your behavior, become conscious of your habits, and notice if the habit that you are executing once again is really the most fruitful use of that energy, or if there's a way to it's almost like the questioning is almost challenging that habit rather than just accepting it as this is the way it is all the time.
Right, and it absolutely is in our actions. The choices we make or the things that we do all day long are those indicators. And so what are we doing, and is it really what we're aiming to do? And this goes back to, when you asked what are my three big questions, or you shared your three big questions, or any of us share our questions, what is my big question that I'm asking at this point? And then looking curiously at my habits, at my practices. Do they match up? Do they align with what I'm doing? And, just by taking a systematic look, collecting some data on yourself, it's amazing how much we can turn up to say, gee, are these actions aligned with what I'm really aiming for? And, I don't know when we'll, kind of move into this, but it was that very practice that I turned on myself in a way when I was wondering what was driving me in choices in my life as well as choices in my business, because I kept landing in places where I was meeting with lots of successes, but it still didn't feel right. Something was not in the right place. And it was a matter of, I was very not conscious for a while. I was just operating. Okay, well, I got a little success here. Maybe if I do more of that, I'll get the next little bit of success. Maybe if I do more, I'll get the next little bit of success. And we can fool ourselves into thinking that we can just, maybe it's little bit by little bit, and not wonder if this is really the right set of actions to get us where we want to go.
Yeah, I think that that's really important and valid. Do you have some examples? You're talking a little bit about yourself, but of other people you've worked with and helping them formulate the question in a way that moves them out of being stuck, for instance?
Sure. And, I'm going to share a specific one to myself, and then I'll share a specific one from people that I work with. But, when I read that happiness question that I shared with you in the beginning of this hangout, and I didn't have an answer to it, and I felt squeamish about it, and I wanted to run and hide, the first thing I said to myself is like, what if I didn't hide? What if I didn't hide from this and I actually wondered about it? And as I started to look at my life, well, clearly my life was not organized around being happy, or I would have had answers to that question.
Exactly.
So I started to look at my life, and I wonder what question my life is organized around. And so I looked at my habits in household stuff. I looked at my habits in my relationship. I looked at my habits at work. And what I seem to be striving for all the time, and eventually like uncovering, wow, my life seemed to be organized around the question of what do I need to do in order to be approved of or recognized. And once I had the question and I went again and I backed it up to the actions, I said, you know what, that makes sense in this situation and that situation and the other situation. And I said, you know what, that question works. Most of my life has been organized around gaining the approval of other people. So I said, interesting. Well, if that's not the real goal I have, if the real goal I have is to be happy, for example, what if I start asking that question? If it were about being happy, what would I do? And I started asking it everywhere in terms of what I would do for dinner and what I would do when I was going out with a friend, or, you know, how I would spend time with my kids, is instead of like, what was the right thing to do? What should I be doing? I said, what would make me happy? And it was really interesting to watch life completely transform, to be able to bring more joy. And I think in our businesses, it's the same thing. That sometimes we have situations where like, we want to be bold. Like, you know, if it were about being bold, what would I do, right? And our goal in our business is to be bold. And then let's look at our actions. Do our actions reflect boldness? You know, do our posts on LinkedIn, you know, reflect boldness? Do what we present out in presentations reflect boldness, or do they reflect safety? You know, playing it safe. So asking questions like that. I work a lot with couples and people who are having challenges in their relationships, and they're not getting what they want. And when we look at it, we can recognize that the guiding question is, what do I need to do to keep the peace? But yet what they really want is something deeper in the relationship. And they want more engagement from their partner, and they want it to be real, but everything that they're doing is aimed at keeping the peace, rather than aimed at getting what's real. And so by taking that kind of inquiry and that kind of approach and say, well, what is it I really want? And now let me measure my language, how I speak, who I interact with, how I do it, the choices I make, the priorities I set, how I use my time. Does it match up to that?
Well, I think that's fascinating. First, just the idea that you struggled so much with the original question that we started the show with, which is, you know, there's 3 ways that make you happy, or 3 things that make you happy. And you struggled with that. So, you know, it makes sense that the question that might arise is, well, why am I having so much trouble with this question? And go deeper into, you know, what does make you happy, and exploring things that you might now do different. But you had to discover, first of all, that you were too busy trying to please people and be accepted by people to worry about being happy. It's like all that sort of overshadowed giving yourself permission to be happy. Somewhere in there that got lost, didn't it?
It totally did. It totally did. And, you know, look, one of the other ones I've just been grappling with, it's one of the reasons that we're here, and I'm lining up Courage to be Curious a little bit differently than I did my previous business, which is, I know that I love being in front of groups. I'm an educator at heart. I love public speaking. I love keynote presentations. I love to run workshops. And I looked at my business and I said, well, if it were about being happy, I would be in front of people. And I'm spending all this time on the back end on my computer and posting on LinkedIn and optimizing posts. And I thought to myself, something is out of whack here, right? It's not lining up. And so as I'm setting up Courage to be Curious, if what really is going to make me happy and also successful, because it's, you know, one of my success tickets is to be out in front of people, is I'm making different choices about how much I'm going to do online initially and how much I'm going to do in public, and setting up workshops and public speaking, because the other isn't really what makes me happy. So I even, you know, asking all these questions all the time, we still, again, follow the habits. You know, I got on the path of being very much online driven, and I let go of the very thing that I feel most good about and that really makes me happy and that I'm successful at.
Wow, what a great transformation you've created yourself just by challenging and going deeper. So we're going to talk about the right questions to align with your goals. And how do you discover what those are for yourself?
You know, it's such a good question. And I think that there's a couple of answers to that. One of the things, you know, is to really say, well, what do I want, right? Well, just like I did. Well, I want to be out in front of people more. So, you know, what do I ask myself here? And do I want to be bold? What is the thing that I really want? And so to look at your desires that arise. And when we have those desires, a lot of them come from, you know, our head and someplace in our heart. And we say, what do I really want? And then am I actually moving towards that? Another technique, though, that I really want to introduce to people is, and it's one of my favorites, is I go back, especially as a business person, and I scan things and I say, when have I been most successful? When have I been most effective? When have I, in the past, had the most of what it is I'm trying to achieve now? And I go back to those moments of success in the past. And then I ask myself, what are the conditions that surrounded it? What existed then? You know, who was I? Who was I in relationship with? How did I do this work in the past? What were those conditions? And by doing that examination, it has led me to some of the most powerful questions to say, you know, not only what does it mean for me to be successful, but if these are my success factors, then what do I do now to position myself to leverage my innate given success factors? We sometimes forget that we have all these success factors innately inside of us. Like, they're there. They demonstrated themselves in the past, whether it was in, you know, a meetup group or a public organizing or a social justice environment or a volunteer group or in the house or someplace else. We have been successful and happy and brought forth what we most want. Go back to find out what those things are. Now ask yourself, how do I bring more of that into what I'm doing now?
Terrific. Do you ever come across someone saying, but I can't find something that I feel successful about? Or, well, what about if they're brand new in their business and they really don't have a way of relating to success in that part of their life?
Right. It is interesting. I do get people who answer the question and say, well, I don't really know. I don't have anything. And I invite people to go back. You can go back as far as elementary school. You can go far, you know, back to high school. You can go back to college. You can go back to summer camp. You can go back to anywhere. Once you've defined like what it is I'm seeking to be bold, or I'm seeking to engage other people, or I'm seeking to be have great influence, or I'm seeking to be inspirational. Whatever it is you're seeking to do, you've had some experience doing it, or you probably wouldn't be seeking it. So I invite people back. I don't let them off the hook. There's no such thing as, oh, I don't know. There's no such thing. And I say, and if there was, what would it be? And if it was when you were 10, when would it have happened? Because my belief that it's in there, because I know that it's in there, you know, just really is then what trumps everything. And we always find it. I've never had a case when we didn't find it.
Oh, perfect. That's what I wanted to hear. So for those who say, no, I really can't relate to that. I can't find it. I don't know where it is. Yeah, you're going to challenge them, and it will come. They have to maybe give it permission to come to the surface, and maybe they've spent, you know, too much time in shoulds. I should be, or something that's getting them in the way of what, as you say, they want to be doing. They want to.
Oh, I'm sorry. And also because people separate their business selves from the rest of themselves. So they think that there's no evidence of it, maybe because I haven't done it in a business sense or in a career sense before. But like, we're one integrated person. We don't leave parts of ourselves behind in different realms. We have all those factors, and we've demonstrated them as a parent, as a community member, as a student, in all those situations. And they will then manifest in your professional work.
Got it. What do you think, before we finish up here today, what do you think would be, if I'm looking for the best question that I can dig out in most any circumstance to move me forward and being out of stuck mode, what might that be? How might you phrase it?
The question in terms of getting out of stuck.
Yeah.
I think that one of the questions, gosh, I wish you'd asked me this ahead of time, right? I would have prepared something. No, but
You love impromptus.
it's called impromptus. And, one of those questions is, and we're familiar with it, if we weren't afraid, what would we do? But I like the question phrase that if there were absolutely no limitations, nothing that would confine you, nothing that would judge you, and you absolutely had everything in front of you that was possible, what would you do?
Got it.
Because it goes right into the heart. Like, what do I really want? If no one else is there to judge you, if nothing is there to stop you, if there are no obstacles or barriers in the way, and you had total freedom to choose anything in this moment, what would you do?
That's it. I think that's just so powerful all by itself, because to me, let's pack your bag and go home and just grab that question all by itself, because we so often start our questioning with limiting thinking. It starts with, if only I could do this, or, if only this was easier for me, or, a lot of those parts that limit it before you just go straight for, this is what I want, regardless of whatever might get in the way. This is what I'm focusing on now. It's about what am I going to do to get there? And you don't start off limited. So I love that. That's a great question. Great question to know how to move forward. So thank you for that. Before we go, I've been watching here. We haven't had any questions come up, which kind of surprises me. You've got one last minute, everyone, to go ahead and get your questions in the comments section. We are going to be closing the show in just a moment. We will have an after show. So if you want to come in and ask your question personally to Adina, or just to come in and say hi, it's a safe space to do so, because we won't be broadcasting anymore. It'll just be us in what we call the green room and the after show. So either get your questions here in the live feed, and I know there is a delay, so go ahead and get typing. And I will be posting in just a moment the link to come into the after show. And I'll do that, Adina, while you go ahead and just give them some final last thoughts, and also how they can get in touch with you if they want more information.
Sure, absolutely. So I think as a final last thought is, it's called the courage to be curious, because there's a great amount of vulnerability in being curious. There's a great amount of vulnerability in really looking and seeking, and yet there's all the realm of possibilities. So to just keep moving forward with those questions, not to be afraid of the answers. And in terms of how to reach and some things that I have available for the launch of Courage to be Curious, Courage to be Curious is at www.couragetobecurious.com. Our website is partially up. You'll see us there. And one of the things I invite you to do if you want to enter your information into Courage to be Curious, or send us an email at Adina, ADINA, at Courage to be Curious, is that I'm going to be running a company launch promotion. I have an amazing tool called the Consciousness Mastery Index that really helps us to increase and look at how conscious we are and increase our capacity for consciousness in our life and our work. That is typically going to run at a much higher price, but I'm going to offer it at cost for the launch. And the cost of the assessment is actually $60. And then the debrief, which is typically going to be $250, going to offer for another $50. So that means for $110, the assessment and the debrief, which is going to run for a short time after Courage to be Curious launches on June 16th. So to sign up for information on that promotion, enter your name on the website or send me an email and name today's hangout. So we are also going to have a free gift for you called 5 Courageous Questions to Transform Your Life. And so you can enter your information. We'll give you that as well.
That is fabulous. Oh, I love this idea, Conscious Mastery Index. I think we all need to master being more conscious now that we realize how much is driven by the subconscious. And not that that's bad, as long as the subconscious is supporting what you want in the conscious realms, great to let it run for you. But if it's running amok, then I think you need to get the conscious in alignment, or the subconscious in alignment. So I love that. And perhaps once you get yourself all set for people, we can also put the link for that registration in the comments section as well.
Great.
Okay, terrific. I want to thank you all for being here. I've still been looking. I see many of you that are here. There's Pal Rosta and Lynn Hawkins and Cynthia O'Neill and Rachel Orsi, Tammy O'Meara, just to see a few that I see as I'm scrolling down. Thanks for being with us today. And any of the rest of you that are in the replay mode, still feel free to put your questions in the comments section, because Adina and I will be receiving those, and we'll get the answers that we have back to you. So thank you again for joining us. I've put the link up so you can join us in the after show. So come on in and say hi, and bring your questions in for Adina there. Okay, everyone, have a great day, and thanks for being with us this week. Bye-bye now.